From Time magazine's article, Silent Night, the story of the World War I Christmas truce of 1914. On a crisp, clear morning 100 years ago, thousands of British, Belgian, and French soldiers put down their rifles, stepped out of their trenches, and spent Christmas mingling with their German enemies along the Western Front. In the 100 years since, the event has been seen as kind of a miracle, a rare moment of peace just a few months into a war that would eventually claim over 15 million lives. But what actually happened on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day of 1914? And did they really play soccer on the battlefield? Pope Benedict XV, who took office that September, had originally called for a Christmas truce, an idea that was officially rejected. Yet it seems the sheer misery of daily life in the cold, wet, dull trenches was enough to motivate troops to initiate a truce on their own, which means that it's hard to pin down exactly what happened. A huge range of differing oral accounts, diary entries, and letters home from those who took part make it virtually impossible to speak of a typical Christmas truce as it took place across the Western Front. To this day, historians continue to disagree over the specifics. No one knows where it began or how it spread, or if by some curious, festive magic it broke out simultaneously across the trenches. Nevertheless, some 2/3 of the troops, about 100,000 people, are believed to have participated in the legendary truce. Most accounts suggest the truce began with carol singing from the trenches Christmas Eve, a beautiful moonlit night, frost on the ground, white almost everywhere, as Private Albert Morin of the 2nd Queen's Regiment recalled in a document later rounded up by the New York Times. Graham Williams of the 5th London Rifle Brigade described it in an even greater detail. First the Germans would sing one of their carols, and then we would sing one of ours, until we started up O Come All Ye Faithful. The Germans immediately joined in, singing the same hymn to the Latin word Adeste Fideles. And I thought, well, this is really the most extraordinary thing. Two nations both singing the same carol in the middle of a war. The next morning, in some places, German soldiers emerged from their trenches calling out "Merry Christmas" in English. Allied soldiers came out warily to greet them. In others, Germans held up signs reading, "You no shoot, we no shoot." Over the course of the day, troops exchanged gifts of cigarettes, food, buttons, and hats. The Christmas truce also allowed both sides to finally bury their dead comrades, whose bodies had lain for weeks in no man's land, the ground between the opposing trenches. The phenomenon took different forms across the Western Front. One account mentions a British soldier having his hair cut by his pre-war German barber. Another talks of a pig roast. Several mentions of impromptu kickabouts with makeshift soccer balls, although contrary to popular legend, it seems unlikely that there were any organized matches. The truce was widespread, but not universal. Evidence suggests that in many places firing continued, and in at least two truce was attempted. A truce was attempted, but soldiers attempting to fraternize were shot by opposing forces. And of course, it was only ever a truce, not a peace. Hostilities returned in some places later that day, and in others not until after New Year's Day. I remember the silence, the eerie sound of silence, one veteran from 5th Battalion, the Black Watch, Alfred Anderson, later recalled to The Observer. It was a short peace in a terrible war. As the Great War resumed, it wreaked havoc, such destruction and devastation that soldiers became hardened to the brutality of war. While there were occasional moments of peace throughout the rest of the World War I, they never again came on the scale of the Christmas truce since 1914. Yet for many at the time, the story of the Christmas truce was not an example of chivalry in the depths of war, but rather a tale of subversion, when the men on the ground decided that they were not fighting the same war as their superiors. With no man's land sometimes spanning just 100 feet, enemy troops were so close they could hear each other and even smell their cooking. the commander of the 2nd British Corps, General Sir Horace Smith Dorrien, believed that this proximity posed the greatest danger to the morale of the soldiers, and told divisional commanders to explicitly prohibit any friendly intercourse with the enemy. In a memo issued December 5th, he warned that troops in trenches in close proximity to the enemy side were easily, if permitted to do so, to live and let live theory of life. Indeed, one British soldier, Murdoch M. Wood, speaking in 1930, said, "I then came to the conclusion that I have held very firmly since, that if I had been left to ourselves, there would never have been another shot fired." Adolf Hitler, then a corporal of the 16th Bavarians, saw it differently. "Such a thing should not have happened in wartime," he is said to have remarked. "Have you no German sense of honor?" Still, a century later, the truce has been remembered as a testament to the power of hope and humanity in a dark hour of history. It has been immortalized and fictionalized in children's novels like Michael Forman's War Game, and in such films as Joyeux Noël and Oh, What a Lovely War, and even a controversial Christmas ad from this year from Salisbury's, a British supermarket chain. To mark this centenary this year, Prince William unveiled a memorial on December 12th, a metal frame representing a soccer ball with 2 hands clasped inside it. Sorry. 2 hands clasped inside it. And a week later, inspired by the events of the truce, the British and German army soccer teams played a friendly match. And though the Christmas truce may have been a one-off in the conflict, the fact that it remains so widely commemorated speaks to the fact that its heart, it symbolized a very human desire for peace, no matter how fleeting. In all our lives, this is me, not the article. In all our lives, we have issues with factions, with friends, with enemies. But this is Christmas. This is Christmas. If men who the day before were trying to kill each other can lay down their arms, remember the gift that God gave to us, remembered on this day, a child in swaddling clothes, birthed of a virgin, the Savior to the world. Today we remember God's gift to us. And we should remember that no matter what wrongs others have done you, what wrongs you've done them, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. What matters is what God has done for us. Merry Christmas to all. Hope, peace, forgiveness, and love for the new year. God bless.